talk about Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. This is how you do it. They brought back this same director from Wrath of Khan, Nicholas Meyer, to do Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. 1991 film. And let me explain something about 1991. At that point, we only had 1 through 5 of Star Trek, and a majority of them were terrible. And, you know, Paramount knew it. People knew how that we hated it, especially number 5, the last one that came out. The whole, why does God need a spaceship controversy? Excuse me. It mattered to people. It mattered to people how bad 5, 3, and 1 were. But people love 2. They're okay with 4. And so they're like, we need to bring back the classic director who did Khan. And it was a good call. It was a good call. You made a really good Star Trek movie. So the basic premise is that, like, Praxis, Klingon moon, blew up due to a mining disaster. And so Kronos starts losing its ozone layer. There's the Leonard Nimoy hippie element. They start losing their ozone layer, and they're going to start dying off in about 50 years. And so that somewhat forces the Klingons to try to make peace with the Federation, try to, like, maybe even join the Federation. And so Kirk gets tapped to go and, like, escort, the Klingon Chancellor. And even though everyone knows that Klingons killed his son, and I'll be honest with you, when I watched this movie, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that douche. He was the guy that wore the sweater like he walked out of a tennis court in 1984. Hey, what's this? A bridge of the Enterprise? Oh. I forgot about that kid. But he was killed by Klingons. And so Kirk holds a grudge. Interesting aspects to characters. Sets up a lot of tension. You know? And it's also interesting that Starfleet would do that. That they would send Kirk. You know, that number one, they wanted to have a show of force, one of their most legendary and dangerous captains, with his most legendary and dangerous crew, and also has a grudge. So it's something that maybe even Kirk can overcome in order to facilitate what needs to be done for the sake of peace, which is always a good idea if you ask me. It's interesting, but there is a little bit too much politics in this movie, and that makes this movie not quite as good as Wrath of Khan. All right, so but Kirk is not the only one that has bad blood. There's plenty of long-standing hatred on many sides of this conflict, and a lot of people not sure they should ally themselves with the Federation. I did like the dinner scene where they came and they had Romulan. I thought this was illegal. Hey, in the sake of peace. And they had this conversation, and I know, like, there's a lot of Herman Melville in Wrath of Khan, but there is way too much Shakespeare in this one. All right, and they had this conversation about how you need to hear Hamlet or something like that in its original Klingon. And so I thought it was a really interesting concept because it's something from Earth culture that the Klingons liked, right? And so, but they wouldn't want to say that they like something from Earth culture, so they just said, "Oh, no, it started here," and somehow got to Earth. It's ours, actually, which is kind of interesting. It shows, like, how proud they are as a people and so forth. And even though, like, facing extinction, they're still like, screw the Federation. Some of them are, and it's interesting. It's interesting. A little too much politicking. A little, and there's no way that Leonard Nimoy cannot be a hippie. All right, so, and you know what's funny about doing Shakespeare and Klingon? People do that. Go to YouTube, search people doing Shakespeare and Klingon. You're going to find people doing that because of this movie. All right. And it reminds me of an old Vulcan proverb. Only Nixon could go to China. Leonard Nimoy, every single turn, he's... Anyway. The anti-grav attack on the Chancellor's ship, amazing sequence for 1991. You understand. And I remember seeing that in the theaters and like, wow, that was freaking awesome. Plus dead Klingons. And so I thought that was done very well. But because of the situation, it seemed like the Enterprise fired on the ship. You know, Kirk surrenders. He and Dr. McCoy go and try to help on their ship. They're unable to. Chancellor Gorkin dies. And they get arrested and sent to a penal colony, Klingon penal colony. It was fantastic tension. So Kirk and the gang needs to get to the bottom of it because it appeared that the Enterprise, they get sent to a penal colony. They meet some strange characters and they learn a lesson about flirting with a changeling. Shapeshifters, don't do that. That's good advice. And they eventually escape. And then that final sequence when they race to Kittimer, they try to get to Kittimer. Sulu on the Reliant. Was it the Reliant? I'm forgetting. Kirk on the Enterprise. And that fire. So good. The end was just so fantastic. It was so good. I hope I didn't ruin it for you because I did the notes for this yesterday. And last night I was like, I'm going to watch it again. Great movie. It's back to the basics. It's high tension and total war around every corner. It's a real classic masculine sci-fi adventure movie. 10 of 13 stars. Wrath of Khan is slightly better. Less boring politics.